At approximately 11 last night, the first 5 activists from the MV Saoirse arrived home in Dublin Airport to be met by an exuberant crowd of fans and fellow activists, as well as the families of the 5. Their tale is somewhat different to what was being put out by the Israeli embassy here in Dublin, and also statements being made from the Israeli government in Israel. It's one of far more violence and danger at sea, but also one of total defiance on behalf of the prisoners whilst they were incarcerated in Given prison.
Well, the corral, there was 5 warships and there was 2 smaller gunboats that actually surrounded us. And from the bigger 2 of the bigger ships, they launched landing craft and Zodiac, which numbered about 12. And they surrounded both the Teria and the Saoirse, and they more or less corralled them into a smaller and smaller and smaller space. And we still wouldn't give in to let them board. We said, okay, if you're going to board, come and board, but you're not actually welcome. But they really wanted us to kind of open the doors for them and kind of basically welcome them in, but which we wouldn't do. But we offered no violence, no resistance. But we eventually made a run for it because it was getting a bit hairy, there was actually heavy machine guns trained on us from the smaller vessels and snipers, and the boats were full of personnel, Israeli personnel with balaclavas, heavily armed with assault rifles and frightening looking people actually. But we made a run for it, and they got in front of us and they stopped us, and they eventually put on very, very, very powerful water cannon, which destroyed the electronics all over the ship. It destroyed the bridge burst into flames, all the 220 volt on the bridge practically exploded.
Nobody's heard about that.
Well, that's what's actually happened. So. Look, we were in a very dangerous situation. We lost it. We actually lost our 220 volt system. We had to shut it down because every time we tried to start it up, there were sparks jumping around everywhere and smoke. And we were on the emergency 24 volt backup. At this stage, we had been thumped. We had been whacked a little bit, and we had damage to our stern. And at that stage, we were taking water. So just before the Israeli Special Forces boarded the vessel, there was probably 2 feet of water in the engine room. When they came aboard, they dropped their automatic rifles, but they then took out their pump-action shotguns and their laser equipment and their sidearms, and they kept them trained on us all the time. And if anybody had to move anywhere in the ship, there was an Israeli soldier, one in front, one behind, at gunpoint.
Did they in any way physically handle you when you were on board?
No, because we stuck together. They wanted us to come outside of the vessel, but we wouldn't. They wanted us to come out one by one and get into one of the smaller landing craft, and we refused. But no, they didn't. They didn't physically handle us. No.
And then in Ashdod, how did they get you off the vessel?
There was a standoff in Ashdod, and which took about maybe 2.5 hours. We asked for our leader, Fintan Lane, asked to see our ambassador, and our consular came down. Some of the Canadians were assaulted. They were heavily bruised, and they were tasered. Some of them were tasered. So and they were quite roughly handled in the port of Ashdod.
I have to really, really put my hand on my heart and say, see the 2 women, see the abuse that they took, and it was horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I mean, it was 15, 16 of us on a wing, men on the wing, and we stood up to them, and that's, in comparison to what the Palestinian people are going through, prisoners are going through, it was nothing, but and probably in a jail back here, people would say it's very unacceptable. But but what we went through compared to what they're going through, because the whole time we were there, we just kept comparing. Oh God, what's the Palestinian prisoners going through? What we're going through. You know, it was just nastiness, lies, you know, just constant lies, and you know, just abuse the whole time. You know, now I have to say there was a few of them weren't too bad, but the majority of them, you know, they just didn't like. They didn't like the fact that Irish people were telling them what to do. They just couldn't take that in. They couldn't comprehend it. You know, everywhere we went, you know, it was, you're not telling us what to do. We're Irish, we're political prisoners. You won't tell us what to do. We'll tell you what to do. End of story. You know, and this, I'll just give you one account what they did was they tried to split us up in the mornings, and we just all said, right, everybody back in their cells, and we'll bang the cell doors closed, and it says, one out or all out. You know, we're not coming out until you think. In the space of 20 minutes, we were all out again. They let us all out again. You know, and then the governor came round, and he was the big hard sort of thing. And Fenton just turned around and told them they had this thing about waking you up at 5 times a night. You know, they did it on the first night. We arrived there. They boarded the ship at 4 o'clock. We ended up in the prison at 5 o'clock the following morning. We were all pretty shattered, pretty tired, and we were in the cells. Me and Jared Barn were in the cell, and in come storms of two screws, screaming and shouting, prisoners up, prisoners up, prisoners up. So we jumped up out of bed. We didn't know what was going on. You know, we thought we were getting moved again, and they turned around and they says that started laughing. You know, and then we realised, it says, right, and then one of the guys, young fellas that had been in before, he told us that what the practice is to come in 5 times a night and waking you up out of bed. You know, so in fairness to Fenton turned around and says, tell him, this won't be happening. And the governor looked at him and says, what? This won't be happening? Excuse me, this will be happening. You will be getting up out of bed and blah blah blah. And Fenton says, listen, we're political prisoners, blah blah blah. We will not be getting up out of bed. End of story. We will not be obeying your orders. We'll not be doing what you tell us to do. End of story. And that's it. And it was very, very, you know, just, and they couldn't take it. They couldn't comprehend the way we just told them what to do. They just couldn't handle it. We
had to stick together, and we just emphasised that we weren't criminals. That we were kidnapped. We were political prisoners. And you know, those rules wouldn't apply to us. And we stood firm on that. And eventually, we were allowed free association, which was a key part of our issues. So, yeah, but unfortunately, we didn't get to see the girls, and they weren't so lucky. We were prepared, yeah, but it's still mad to actually see them. You know, the hatred in their eyes and their threats, the threatening, you know, behaviour. You have to experience that, you know.
Is Trevor Hogan going to get onto another boat and sail back to Gaza?
Well, I'd be first in the queue, but I'm sure there's a lot of Irish people that want to be doing that. And, you know, hopefully we start preparations again soon enough. But the flotilla it's just a means to an end. We can't lose sight of the whole purpose of this is to end this siege, this illegal siege in Gaza, which is collectively punishing an entire population. And that's the focus, and we just need to keep that in sight. Whatever means necessary to achieve that, we'll all try and get behind. Whether it's a flotilla or whether it's the flytilla, whether it's whatever, we can just all get behind the next.
There's 1.5 million people living in Gaza, a small strip 14 kilometres long by 6-7 kilometres wide. It's more than the population of the city of Dublin. Now, they can't be supplied using one road through the Rafah crossing. We need an airport and we need a port there, and we need this community to start to function properly, and that's the only way to do it. And the Israeli siege has to be lifted.
Just very quickly, would you do it again?
In the morning, yeah. And I hope to make it to Gaza at some stage. This is my second attempt to make it to Gaza, but look, hopefully we will get there, and hopefully the suffering of the Palestinian people will be alleviated soon.